There's a reason they never taught you this in school. A reason your father looked away when you asked him how power really works between men and women. Because what I'm about to reveal isn't just uncomfortable. It rewrites everything you thought you knew about attraction, influence, and the invisible strings that move human hearts. 500 years ago, a disgraced Italian diplomat sat in exile, stripped of power, watching the world from the shadows. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli. And in that darkness, he discovered something profound, that love, loyalty, and desire aren't random, they're engineered. They follow patterns, principles, laws as predictable as gravity. The powerful have always known this. They've weaponized it, refined it, passed it down in whispers. And today, you're going to learn what they never wanted you to know. Let me take you back to Florence, 1513. Machiavelli writes by candlelight, his fingers stained with ink, his mind burning with a single obsession. How do the few control the many? How does a prince command a kingdom? How does a man command respect, devotion, even obsession from those around him? His answer was brutal in its honesty. People, he wrote, are not moved by what is right. They are moved by what they fear to lose and what they desperately want to gain. Morality is a story we tell ourselves. But beneath that story runs a deeper current, the current of self-interest, ego, and primal need. Machiavelli understood that the person who controls that current controls everything. The throne, the battlefield, the bedroom. He saw that the same principles that toppled empires also govern the most intimate spaces of human connection. Because at the end of the day, seduction and statecraft are the same game. They're about managing perception, creating desire, and making someone believe that their freedom is actually their choice. Now here's where it gets interesting. Machiavelli said it's better to be feared than loved, but he never said you couldn't have both. In fact, the most powerful leaders throughout history mastered this paradox. They created devotion not through weakness or supplication, but through strategic unpredictability. Look at how Catherine the Great commanded the loyalty of her generals and lovers alike. She never begged, she never chased. She made herself the prize worth fighting for, the mystery worth solving. She understood what Machiavelli knew in his bones, that attention is currency, and the moment you freely give it away, you become poor. This is the first principle, and it cuts through every dating guru's feel-good advice like a knife. Scarcity creates value, not just in markets, in minds. A woman or anyone doesn't fall for someone who is always available, always predictable, always safe. They fall for the person who remains just slightly out of reach, the person whose attention feels earned, not given. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the psychology of desire itself. When something is abundant, we take it for granted. When it's scarce, we obsess over it. Think about Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. History remembers her beauty, but that's a shallow reading. Cleopatra was a master strategist. She understood that Caesar had conquered nations, had access to any woman in the known world, so she didn't offer herself freely. She made him pursue her intelligence, her wit, her political acumen. She controlled the narrative. She became the one thing he couldn't simply take by force, a woman who met him as an equal, who challenged him, who remained sovereign even in his presence. That sovereignty is magnetic. It's the essence of what Machiavelli called virtue, a kind of bold, self-possessed power that bends reality to its will. When you walk into a room and you're not seeking validation, not scanning for approval, not performing for attention, when you simply exist in your own authority, you become gravitational. People orbit you. They can't help it. Because most people are desperate to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen. And desperation repels. Self-possession attracts. Let me tell you about a modern case study. There was a man, let's call him Marcus, a senior executive at a Fortune 500 company. Successful by every measure, but invisible to the woman he'd been pursuing for months, a colleague named Sophia who barely acknowledged his existence. Marcus tried everything the conventional wisdom suggests. Flowers, compliments, being supportive and available, being the nice guy. And Sophia remained indifferent. Then Marcus read Machiavelli, and he changed his entire approach. He stopped pursuing. He stopped initiating. He became busy, unavailable, focused entirely on his own ambitions. When Sophia would see him at company events, he was engaged in conversation with others, laughing, commanding attention, but never seeking hers. Something shifted. Within weeks, Sophia began initiating contact, asking questions, finding reasons to be in his orbit. What changed? Marcus stopped making himself the supplicant and started embodying outcome independence. He became the prize. This is the second principle. He who cares least controls the frame. In any interaction, the person who is less emotionally invested has more power. Not because they're cruel or manipulative, but because they're operating from a position of abundance rather than scarcity. They're not attached to a specific outcome, which paradoxically makes that outcome more likely. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the appearance of virtue versus actual virtue. He understood that perception shapes reality more than reality itself. In human relations, this translates into something profound. It's not what you are that matters most, it's what people believe you are. This is where dark psychology intersects with persuasion. Robert Greene studied this for years before writing The 48 Laws of Power, and his research confirmed what Machiavelli knew centuries earlier. The most influential people craft their image deliberately. They understand that humans make decisions emotionally first, then justify them rationally later. So they learn to trigger the right emotions at the right times. They use strategic vulnerability, showing just enough imperfection to seem real, but never so much that they appear weak. They use preselection, surrounding themselves with indicators of high value. They use social proof, letting others validate their worth rather than proclaiming it themselves. Consider how John F. Kennedy operated. Historical accounts reveal that Kennedy was a master of this psychological architecture. He projected strength and confidence publicly, but in private moments, he would reveal glimpses of his pain, his war injuries, his family pressures, his genuine struggles. This wasn't weakness. It was strategic authenticity. It made people feel they were seeing behind the curtain, that they had special access to the real man. And that feeling of special access created intense loyalty and attraction. Women who met Kennedy felt chosen, special, like they were seeing something others couldn't see. This is the third principle. Create the illusion of intimacy without actually surrendering power. True intimacy is about vulnerability, yes, but strategic vulnerability is about revealing yourself on your terms in measured doses to create a sense of connection without becoming transparent or predictable. Mystery isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being selectively open, about keeping people curious, about ensuring that even when someone knows you, they don't feel they've completely figured you out. Now we need to talk about something uncomfortable. Machiavelli's most controversial assertion, that sometimes calculated ruthlessness is necessary, that maintaining your position requires the willingness to act against immediate emotional impulses for long-term strategic gain. In relationships, this translates to boundaries, real boundaries. The kind that don't bend just because someone cries or threatens to leave. Think about it. Every time you compromise a boundary to keep someone happy, you teach them that your boundaries are negotiable. You train them to manipulate you. You surrender power. Machiavelli would say that the leader who is too merciful ends up creating more suffering than the one who establishes clear, firm rules from the beginning. This applies directly to attraction dynamics. The man who sets clear standards, who walks away from disrespect, who maintains his own code regardless of external pressure, earns respect. The man who bends and accommodates and sacrifices his own values to maintain a relationship becomes invisible. Not because women are cruel, but because humans are biologically wired to respect strength and be repelled by weakness. History gives us a perfect example in Henry VII and Anne Boleyn. Anne was a lady-in-waiting, not a queen. But she refused to become Henry's mistress. She held her boundary absolutely. She knew her value and refused to accept less than she was worth. And this drove Henry mad with desire. He restructured the entire English church, risked civil war, abandoned his wife of 20 years, all because one woman maintained her boundary. Now, Anne's story ended tragically, which illustrates another Machiavellian truth. Power is dangerous and must be wielded carefully. But her rise to power demonstrates that unshakable boundaries create obsessive desire. When you know your worth and refuse to negotiate it, you force others to meet you at your level or leave. And paradoxically, this makes them fight harder to stay. Let's go deeper into the mechanics of influence. Machiavelli understood that the most effective power is the power people don't realize you have. In persuasion, this is called covert influence, shaping someone's thoughts and decisions while making them feel those thoughts are their own. This is where dark psychology gets really interesting. There's a technique called pacing and leading that master negotiators use. You start by matching someone's emotional state, their language patterns, their values. You pace them. This creates rapport and trust. Then once that rapport is established, you gradually lead them toward your desired outcome. They follow because they feel understood, because the shift is so gradual they don't notice it's happening. In attraction dynamics, this might look like initially agreeing with a woman's worldview, validating her feelings, showing that you understand her. Then once that connection is solid, you begin introducing new perspectives, challenging her assumptions in playful ways, expanding her thinking. She doesn't resist because you've already established yourself as someone who gets her. This is exactly how cult leaders operate, by the way, and the most effective seducers throughout history. They make you feel seen and understood in ways no one else does. Then they reshape your reality so gradually you think it was your idea all along. Franklin D. Roosevelt was a master of this. Historical analysis of his political strategy reveals that he rarely directly contradicted opponents. Instead, he would acknowledge their concerns, validate their feelings, then reframe the entire conversation in his terms. By the end, people would be agreeing with him enthusiastically, having forgotten they started with the opposite position. This is the fourth principle: control the frame, control the outcome. A frame is the underlying context through which information is interpreted. In any interaction, someone's frame is dominant. In successful relationships, particularly in attraction, it's crucial that your frame, your reality, your standards, your perspective becomes the shared frame. This doesn't mean dominating or controlling another person. It means being so grounded in your own reality that others naturally align with it because it feels stable and certain. Consider the neuroscience here. The human brain hates uncertainty. It creates anxiety. When you enter someone's life as a stable, certain force, someone who knows what they want, who they are, where they're going, you become psychologically soothing. The brain relaxes around you, trust builds, and in that trust, influence becomes effortless. But here's the twist Machiavelli understood: you can't fake this, at least not for long. True certainty comes from actually knowing yourself, from having real competence, from building genuine value. The dark psychology isn't about deception. It's about understanding the mechanisms so you can align your authentic self with psychological effectiveness. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally triggers attraction and loyalty, not because you're manipulating, but because you've built yourself into someone worthy of those things. Let's talk about something crucial: the push-pull dynamic. Machiavelli wrote about maintaining tension between fear and love, between threat and reward. In modern psychology, we call this intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most powerful tool for creating obsession. Casinos use it. Social media uses it. And whether you realize it or not, every relationship that felt addictive used it too. Here's how it works. When reward and punishment are unpredictable, when validation comes randomly rather than consistently, the brain releases more dopamine than it does for predictable rewards. This is why a slot machine is more addictive than a salary. Why a text from someone unpredictable feels more thrilling than one from someone who always responds. Now, I'm not suggesting you manipulate people's emotions cruelly, but understand this: being consistently available, consistently validating, consistently predictable makes you psychologically invisible. The person who is warm, then slightly distant, then warm again creates a pattern the brain can't help but fixate on. This isn't about hot and cold games. It's about natural variation. Having your own life, your own priorities, your own emotional autonomy so that your attention and energy naturally ebb and flow based on your genuine needs, not based on someone else's expectations. Napoleon Bonaparte understood this instinctively. His letters to Josephine oscillate between passionate declarations and calculated distance. He would pursue her intensely, then disappear to command armies, creating a cycle that kept her perpetually oriented toward him. When he was present, he was fully present. When he was absent, he was completely absent. No apologies, no explanations, just the natural rhythm of a man consumed by his mission. This is the fifth principle: mission before relationship. The man with a genuine mission, a purpose larger than any single person, is infinitely more attractive than the man whose entire world revolves around the relationship. Because women, like all humans, are attracted to power and potential. A man actively building something, conquering something, creating something radiates possibility. He's going somewhere, and the invitation to be part of that journey is far more compelling than being the entire journey itself. Now let's address the elephant in the room: ethics. Is any of this manipulative? Machiavelli would say that manipulation only exists when there's deception about intent. If you're honest about who you are and what you want, if you're acting with integrity toward your own values while understanding psychological dynamics, you're not manipulating, you're simply being effective. The alternative is what? Being ineffective. Pretending you don't understand how influence works. That doesn't make you moral. It makes you willfully ignorant and probably unsuccessful. Every person who's ever captured your attention, earned your loyalty, or influenced your decisions understood these principles, whether they could articulate them or not. The question isn't whether to use psychology. You can't avoid it. The question is whether you'll use it consciously and ethically, or unconsciously and messily. Think about Steve Jobs and his reality distortion field. People who worked with him describe how he could make you believe the impossible was possible, how he would convince you to achieve things you didn't think you were capable of. Was this manipulation, or was it visionary leadership? The difference is intent and outcome. Jobs used his influence to push people toward greatness, to create products that changed the world. The principles are the same whether you're inspiring excellence or exploiting weakness. Your character determines which one you choose. This brings us to the sixth principle. Power without purpose is tyranny, but purpose without power is fantasy. You need both. You need to understand influence and psychology, and you need to channel that understanding toward something meaningful. The most magnetic people in history weren't just influential. They were influential in service of something larger than themselves. They had vision, and that vision justified and directed their power. Let's examine another case study: Winston Churchill and Clementine. Churchill was known for his commanding presence, his unwavering conviction, his ability to inspire nations. But in his marriage, he maintained that same sovereign presence. He didn't chase Clementine's approval. He didn't reshape himself to please her. He remained utterly himself, flawed, difficult, consumed by duty, and she became his most loyal ally precisely because he never compromised his core identity. This is counterintuitive to modern relationship advice that says compromise is everything. But Machiavelli would argue that the person who compromises their essential nature to maintain a relationship has already lost the relationship, because attraction isn't built on accommodation, it's built on respect. And you cannot respect someone who abandons themselves to please you. You might appreciate them, you might rely on them, but you won't be drawn to them with any real intensity. The seventh principle emerges clearly. Authenticity is your greatest weapon, but only if you've built a self-worth being authentic about. This is where the real work happens. You can learn every psychological technique in the world, but if you're an insecure, undeveloped person trying to project confidence, it will leak through. People sense incongruence instinctively, but if you actually do the work, if you build real competence, real value, real confidence through facing challenges and overcoming them, then allowing that authentic self to show becomes powerfully attractive. You're not pretending to be certain, you are certain. You're not pretending to have options, you have options. You're not pretending to have a mission, you're living it every day. And that authenticity, combined with understanding psychology, becomes unstoppable. Let me tell you what Machiavelli would say if he saw modern dating culture. He'd be astounded at how thoroughly people have abandoned strategic thinking in favor of being themselves, without first building a self-worth being. He'd observe men seeking validation from women instead of validation from achievement. He'd see women attracted to potential and nice guys in theory, but consistently choosing dominant, self-possessed men in practice, then wondering why. And he'd recognize that the disconnect between stated preferences and revealed preferences is as old as humanity itself. People don't want what they say they want. They want what they're biologically programmed to want: strength, certainty, genetic fitness, social status, resources, protection. The language changes. The underlying drives don't. This is where we arrive at a profound truth. You cannot negotiate desire. You cannot logic someone into being attracted to you. You cannot convince, persuade, or prove your way into someone's heart. Attraction is a response to presence, to power, to the feeling someone gives you when they're around. And that feeling comes from who you fundamentally are, not what you say or do to impress. Machiavelli understood that a prince couldn't make people love him through kindness alone. He had to command respect first. Love might follow, but it was never the foundation. Respect was. In relationships, the same hierarchy exists. Build respect first through your actions, your boundaries, your competence, your certainty. Affection and attraction follow naturally from that foundation. Try to build affection without respect, and you get friend-zoning, taken for granted, eventual abandonment. The eighth principle crystallizes. Respect is non-negotiable. Everything else is negotiable. This means you must know where your line is, what you will and won't accept, what compromises your integrity and what doesn't. And you must enforce those boundaries absolutely, even when it costs you, especially when it costs you. Because the moment someone sees you'll abandon your standards to keep them, they lose respect. They might stay. They might even say they love you. But the attraction fades because attraction requires tension, and tension requires the possibility that you'll walk away. Your willingness to lose her is precisely what makes her determined not to lose you. This sounds backwards, but watch it play out in every relationship you've ever observed or experienced. The person who needs the relationship less has more power in the relationship. This isn't fair, it isn't romantic, but it's true. Now we must discuss the ultimate Machiavellian question. Is it better to be genuine and potentially lose, or strategic and potentially win? And here's where Machiavelli's genius emerges. He'd say that's a false choice. The most effective strategy is genuine strategic thinking, being authentic about your intentions while being sophisticated about your methods. This means you don't hide that you're interested in someone, but you also don't make them the center of your universe. You express desire without desperation. You pursue without chasing. You remain yourself while understanding the psychological landscape you're operating in. You play the game while maintaining your integrity. Because here's what they don't tell you. The game is always being played whether you acknowledge it or not. The only question is whether you're playing consciously or being played. As we reach the culmination of this understanding, I want you to see the bigger picture. Everything I've shared isn't really about controlling anyone. That's a misnomer. You cannot control another sovereign human being, and attempting to do so always fails eventually. What you can do is control yourself so completely, build yourself so solidly, understand psychology so thoroughly that influence becomes natural. That people are drawn to you not because you're manipulating them, but because you've become the kind of person worth being drawn to. Machiavelli's real message wasn't about manipulation. It was about sovereignty, about being so grounded in your own power, your own mission, your own reality that you bend circumstances rather than being bent by them. In relationships, this means you enter as a complete person, not as half a person seeking completion. You bring abundance, not neediness. You offer partnership from a position of strength, not desperation from a position of weakness. And that fundamental difference changes everything. The woman or man who feels they're choosing a prize versus doing you a favor, that perceptual shift is the entire game. And you don't create that perception through tricks or tactics. You create it through transformation, through actually becoming the prize, through building a life so compelling that access to it feels valuable, through developing skills, status, resources, emotional maturity, and vision that make you objectively high value. Then the psychology we've discussed becomes effortless because it's real. You're not pretending to have options. You have them. You're not faking confidence. You possess it. You're not performing sovereignty. You are sovereign. So here's what I want you to understand as we close. 500 years ago, Machiavelli saw through the comforting lies society tells itself. He saw that power has rules, that influence has mechanics, that human nature, stripped of its moral pretenses, operates on predictable patterns. And he wrote it down, knowing he'd be condemned for his honesty. But the powerful read his work in secret. They always have. They applied his principles while publicly denouncing them. Because that's what power does. It hides its methods while flaunting its results. You now know those methods. You understand the architecture of influence, the psychology of attraction, the dynamics of power in intimate relationship. What you do with this knowledge defines your character. Use it to manipulate, deceive, and exploit, and you'll build a hollow kingdom of resentment. Use it to become genuinely excellent, to build authentic confidence, to create real value while understanding the human landscape, and you'll build something lasting. The principles are neutral. The weapons work the same in any hands. but the person wielding them determines whether they build or destroy. Machiavelli's final lesson is this: fortune favors the bold, but mastery favors the prepared. You can have all the psychological understanding in the world, but without action, it's useless. Without the courage to maintain your boundaries, express your desires, walk away from disrespect, and build something worth being part of, all this knowledge is just theory. The gap between knowing and doing is where most people live their entire lives. They understand what they should do, they just never do it. They know they should build themselves before seeking others. They never build. They know they should maintain standards. They compromise immediately. They know they should have a mission. They orbit someone else's instead. Don't be most people. Be the person who takes this dark wisdom and transforms it into authentic power. Be the person who understands the game well enough to transcend it. Be the person who builds themselves into someone so genuinely valuable that attraction becomes inevitable, not engineered. This is your moment. You can close this, forget what you heard, and continue operating on hopeful ignorance. Or you can accept the uncomfortable truth that power, attraction, and influence follow laws as real as gravity. You can learn those laws, master them, use them ethically but effectively. And in doing so, you don't just change your relationships, you change your entire trajectory. Because the person who understands human nature has an advantage in every domain: business, leadership, friendship, love, legacy. Machiavelli handed you the keys 5 centuries ago. Most people are too afraid to even pick them up, but you're still here, which means something in you recognizes the truth when it's spoken plainly. Something in you is ready to stop being shaped by circumstances and start shaping them. That something is the part of you that will determine everything that comes next. Honor it. Build it, become it, and watch how the world rearranges itself around the person you've become.